imagine that I'm wanting to build a new house or a building. I would never say the first thing I'm going to do is just pour the foundation and then I'm going to figure out what kind of house or building I'm going to build, right? That'd be
crazy.
Crazy. Yeah. Why would I do it that way? Hi, folks. Thanks for tuning in to the RevOps Recruiters podcast. This episode is part 2 of a conversation David and I had around CRM admins versus RevOps leaders. What's the difference? So if you haven't yet heard the first part of the conversation, go and check out episode 10 and then come back and grab the second part here.
Next discipline, let's talk about project management. That's a huge part of this.
Yeah, very much so. And we've talked extensively about project management in this function. I think these two were probably pretty closely aligned here because one of the things that you and I have observed is that for someone that has, especially a certified CRM, HubSpot, Salesforce, whichever one, certified administrator in that area, many times they have other certifications as well. And this project management certification is one that we see alongside many times. Yeah. So in that case, I mean, you're talking about somebody who's gone through the learning process of understanding whether it's Agile or Scrum or whatever it is, right? They're certified in that area. So clearly they understand that. They also, as an administrator within an organization, typically if you're supporting dozens of users, on a weekly basis, you're probably getting dozens of requests. So you got a lot of stuff coming at you. If you're supporting hundreds of users, first of all, I'm sorry if you're one person supporting hundreds of users, but you're probably getting hundreds of requests on a regular basis, right? So you've got to have a way of managing that. Additionally, you're also probably managing at least pieces of technology that are being integrated with the CRM, right? So if the sales team is using this new piece of software, and you're the CRM administrator, it's your job to at least get those hooked up and connected together. So you're project managing some of that. So I think there's certainly some advantages that go there to a CRM administrator. Yeah. What we see is that the differentiator here is I'm looking for someone who has the ability to manage the projects and the requests, but even more so has the ability to work with leadership to prioritize what's most important. I love this. I heard this question a number of years ago, and I think this is vital to an organizational health, which is if everything remains the same, what 1, 2, 3, 4 things can I work on right now that will have the greatest impact on the organization? And I think a RevOps leader needs to be asking that question all the time. Not every day because it could change, but every quarter, every month, they need to be asking themselves that question. I've got all these projects in front of me. If all of them stayed the same and I could just pick 3 that I can move forward in this next 90 days, which ones of these would have the greatest impact on the organization? To me, that's what project management should be about as it relates to moving an organization forward. I'm less concerned about a certification. I'm more concerned about the ability for a leader, regardless of the role, a leader to take what's needed today and get the organization from where they are today to where they need to go tomorrow. Again, we're back to tactics versus strategy.
It's the leadership piece of this role, right? You can project manage the wrong project really well.
That's a great point.
That's what I was thinking about when you were talking. It's like you can be a great project manager. You can have the framework. You can have the process. You can use the right tool. But it's not the right project for the organization at this time. Yeah. It's not the number one, it's not the most important thing. So you can be a great project manager, but project manage the wrong project, right? Really well. Yeah. But it's still not the right move. And so that's where this discernment, higher level skill set comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think these two, so I would say these two are probably, you could certainly find folks in the CRM admin side that know project management systems. Yep. And I like that. That's important. But the big question I want to ask is, are they able to determine what's most important? And are they able to drive that home, completion, execution, and make a difference?
Yeah, that's great. It's really good. All right, the next discipline, we're thinking about the go-to-market system as a whole. Yeah. Like go-to-market system development. Let's unpack that.
So I think this is one of the ones that sways really heavily towards the RevOps leader. And so what I think of in this is I'm thinking of really someone who can come into an organization and say, where are the bright spots? Where are the things that are working within a segment of the business? So sales, marketing, customer success. Go in and find those and then systematize those things so that everyone else can use what that one person was finding success in, and everyone a rising tide raises all ships, right? So everybody there gets better.
Yeah.
Typically, organizations that are looking to add, whether it's a CRM administrator or a RevOps leader, they're at a point where they're beginning to scale, right? They're talking to investors. They're starting to grow. Their sales team is going to have to grow. Their marketing team is going to have to grow. Their customer success team is going to have to grow. To me, growth and scale is all about doing a couple of things. First of all, identifying what works, documenting that, then finding great people that you can put into a system that allows them to have a high probability of success.
Yeah.
So in order to do that, though, you've got to have that step of documentation. You've got to have that step that says, I'm going to go into this team and really identify what's working, where the wind's coming from, document that, and build a system around it. I mean, sometimes it's literally putting documents together. I had a conversation with a friend this morning, a guy that I did some work with years ago, and he said, we're having a transition with a team member, and Adam, we pulled out the binder that you helped us build that walks us through exactly what that function, that particular role within the organization does. And he said some of those things have changed, so we had to tweak it, but it was just great to have documentation of how it works. And so to me, having a leader that can come in and identify those things and document them so that when you bring others into the organization, they have a high probability of success is where this function is. And to me, that goes to the RevOps leader every time.
Yeah, I would agree. The RevOps leader wins out here. When we think about big system, we think end to end, we think holistic, right? We have these buzzwords down, but that really does capture the entire system. And it is so complex, right?
Yeah.
There's so many different parts to this. So what you're talking about, taking those steps, the best leaders that we interview, they have a RevOps playbook.
Yes.
They have a playbook, and it spans the entire funnel. It spans all of these parts: people, processes, data, technology, all the way from top of the funnel to the very bottom, right? Looking at, so, that skill set in itself, that's revenue operations. You're thinking about the entire business. You're thinking big picture. The CRM admin gets hired for a purpose, right? For a specific purpose. Doesn't mean that they can't eventually get to that level, but RevOps leaders have been building this experience, and it's always going to be an end-to-end approach. How do we coverage, right? Coverage, the entire business, covering the business, understanding, diagnosing, looking at what's working, what's not working across the entire funnel, all people across the entire funnel, all processes across the entire funnel, data across the entire funnel, technology, right? And that hands down goes to the RevOps leader.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
for sure.
Yeah.
So let's kind of, one of the things that, David, you and I were talking about is that those are the 4 pillars or the functions of RevOps. And then we did a podcast a while back where we talked about kind of the hard skills and soft skills. So I'd say those are all the hard skills. Then we feel like there's this overlay of soft skills that goes across all of these, right? And that's the EQ, the leadership, the change management. And for us, when we look at candidates, when I'm talking to some of the best RevOps leaders, they have this thing nailed down, right? They're so good at it. And so, for example, if I were to tie it into a particular, let's say we were talking about the project management side of it, to me, the EQ is the individual who's able to come in and say, when they're bombarded with requests, they go into leadership and they say, okay, here's everything that's in front of me right now. This is what I have on my plate over the next 90 days, what we've committed to. I hear you asking for us to work on this other project, and it sounds like it's important and it's critical. So let's look together at everything that's in front of me, and let's decide which one of those we need to move off for now and put this in its place. The ability to do that takes a high level of EQ and a high level of leadership, right? Especially if you're talking to the CEO who's making the request for that change. And oftentimes the CEO is going to say one or two things. Almost always they're going to say one or two things. They're going to say, okay, keep on your current path. Let's add this to next quarter. Or, yep, this is the thing that we need to move off, and let's put this in its place because it's so critical right now. But it takes a certain level of a leader in order to step in and have that conversation. Yeah. But that's what prevents burnout. That's what prevents company frustration, employee frustration, and all those things. So this EQ, leadership, change management, as an overlay over all these 4 functions, it's so critical. And I mean, I think, David, when we've had to hire just CRM administrators, what we've seen is that hasn't always been, in fact, more than not always, many times the strength isn't that. In fact, some of the conflict that we see is they say, we have companies come to us and say, we have a great administrator, but they're not great at this leadership, change management, EQ side of it.
Yeah. The CRM admin isn't required to lead the organizational change. So there's a transformation that happens that in a good scenario that happens, in the best scenario, it's a shift in the entire thought process behind the way we do what we do, right? I mean, it's a fundamental shift in the way we approach revenue. It's a fundamental shift in the way we approach everything, systems, processes in the business. And so that the EQ change management piece, that is the success. That's what leads to success. Ultimately what we're trying to achieve is we're trying to drive change with the least amount of friction, right? But we're trying to drive change and achieve adoption.
Yeah.
And so this EQ skill set, putting a CRM admin into that position, that would set them up for failure, in my personal opinion, right? Unless you are senior enough and you've built out that leadership skill set.
Yeah.
But most of the time, our RevOps leaders will be able to step into that role and take charge and drive it.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's no benefit to a CRM administrator building something that never gets adopted. We had a consultant a number of years ago that worked with a business that I was a part of, and they asked us one day, we were using Salesforce. We just made this huge migration, built out this awesome Salesforce. I'm a little biased because I helped build it, but and then he said, tell me guys, what is your system? This executive team, we're sitting around the table and we said, oh man, it's Salesforce. Absolutely, 100%. He said, no, the system is not the system you build. The system is the system that your people are using. So if your people aren't using Salesforce, then that's not your system. Until you get adoption, until you have everybody utilizing that, the system is the pen and paper, the Excel document, the sticky notes built inside their own head that they're trying to remember. That's their system, because until they're using Salesforce and the adoption is across the entire team, that's not your system. And that stuck with me. So it's not enough just to say, hey, CRM admin, go build it. You got to have people adopt it and use it. It's got to matter that way.
Yeah. 100% agree. This was a wonderful, wonderful conversation and great insight here.
Yeah. So I think what we'd say here is it sounds like we're a little biased towards RevOps.
Just
obviously,
a little bit.
Obviously we are, right? We are the RevOps recruiters, but I would say certainly CRM admins have a function and a place. We're not downplaying that at all. This is really comparing and contrasting if you're hiring the very first role within your organization. I think choosing to hire just a CRM admin might be selling yourself a little short, because you could get someone that could help drive a little more change, a little more impact within the organization. That said, once you start getting to the point of building out a team, a RevOps team, we in fact did a podcast about
Episode
this.
6.
Yeah, I don't remember which one. But yeah, building a killer RevOps team, right? Yeah. Very much a CRM administrator is a part of that, because there's a point at which you get to where there's so much need there that you've got to have somebody driving just that. Yes, absolutely. So we're not devaluing at all the CRM administrator. They certainly play a role. But if a friend comes to me and says, hey, Adam, we're looking to build our first operational function within an organization, what should that look like? My recommendation is always going to go to somebody who's more broad in their experience than someone who's very targeted in their experience. I'm looking strategic versus tactical.
Yeah. The generalist before the specialist.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is the solution here. What do you call it in baseball? The 5-tool.
Yeah, 5-tool player.
5-tool player.
Yeah. Or think about a doctor, right? If you were to say, if you're like, hey, I need to go for an annual checkup, you're going to go to a general practitioner doctor, right?
Right.
Then if you identify an issue, right?
The root cause, yeah.
Then you may say, okay, now I need to go see a heart specialist or an orthopedic or whatever, right?
Yep.
But initially, if I'm just having one, I'm not going to a heart surgeon and asking him to evaluate my overall health. In fact, if he was really good, he'd be like, I don't know anything about that. I only know about this one thing, right? Yeah. And so go to that generalist initially.
Yeah.
A very qualified generalist.
And that helps you save time, helps you save resources specific to revenue operations and building, right? Time, money, resources, lots of headaches later on, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I think that's the right move.
Yeah, for sure. David, man, this was fun.
This was great.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the RevOps Recruiters podcast. We would love it if you would subscribe. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts. Also, if you have comments or suggestions about future episodes, we'd love to hear from you. Put that in the comments section on YouTube and we'll check it out there. Finally, if you're looking to make your first or next RevOps hire, we'd love to help. You can connect with us through our website at www.revsearch.io. Thanks so much for listening.